this stage, it's about everyone working together. There's no point in saying, oh, well, it's the dairy farmer causing the problem, and there's no point in saying it's the dry stock causing the problem. Like, we all need to look after our own. And what I would say to a farmer, you mightn't be the problem, but I suppose it's about ruling out your farmyard and looking at land management practices that you can make. Every small action makes a contribution.
It's great to be back with another Environment Edge podcast, and you're very welcome to the show.
To give us an update on the Agricultural Sustainability Support and Advisory Programme and how water quality improvements are being actioned on farms, Roisin McManus, Teagasc ASSAP Advisor in Tipperary, joins us for a chat.
I'm Cathal Summers.
And I'm Georgia Glenn.
Your Teagasc Sustainability Advisors. And we're back for another Environment Edge podcast, number 112. And here we go.
Roisin, you're really welcome to the show. I suppose you're one of us working in the ASSAP programme, and you're based in County Tipperary. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what the ASSAP programme is about, Roisin?
Yeah, sure. So the ASSAP programme, so it's the Agricultural Sustainability Support and Advisory Programme. And this programme has been up and running since 2018. So it's a collaborative initiative between the Department of Agriculture, Dairy Industry Ireland and Teagasc. And it's designed to support farmers in improving water quality in a practical, farmer-focused way. So what's really important about ASSAP is that it's completely voluntary and confidential. So there's no inspection element to the programme. Instead, it's all about free advice and support for the farmer. So as ASSAP advisors, we work on a one-to-one basis with the farmer in priority catchments. So we visit the farm, look at how water moves throughout the yard and the land, and identify where nutrients or sediment might be at risk of entering a watercourse, for example. And then we can develop a tailored plan with site-specific solutions that work both for the farmer and to benefit water quality. So it's a partnership approach, so built on trust, science and collaboration, with the aim of helping farmers to protect water quality while maintaining a productive, sustainable business. I suppose it's worth noting that ASSAP is open to all types of farms, so dairy, dry stock and tillage. And the dairy co-ops, like for example, Arabon and Dairy Gold, they would look after their own suppliers, whereas Teagasc, like myself, would look after dry stock and tillage. So there's support for everyone, no matter what enterprise you're in.
It's lovely as well, I suppose, that we're working with the Law Pro team and they identify the pressures affecting the water quality. So it's really targeted as well, Roisin, isn't it?
Yes, so Law Pro would refer to pressures in these priority areas for action, and then we can go out on the ground and see, where these problems are. And, you could call to 4 or 5 different farms and there might be no problems, but I suppose you're ruling out the farmyards in that area and trying to pinpoint where the problem is coming from.
That's the big difference, isn't it? Like, we have catchment scientists now from Law Pro, as Deirdre said, working with us to direct us, which is huge, isn't it?
It's definitely, it's all about a collaborative approach. And with the introduction of the 50 million Farming for Water EIP last year, we can now support farmers in accessing funding to implement water protection measures. So this EIP very much complements the ASSAP programme because it provides funding for measures that are over and above your GAP regulations. So, for example, getting farmers to implement measures like a solar pump, water trucks, and permanently fencing off the water body to restrict livestock access. And other examples would be to installing measures to deal with grey water off farmyards, such as, we'll say, a 2-chambered farmyard settlement tank to capture sediment, with the outlook going into like a nature-based solution like a vegetated bunded drain to further capture sediment and filter nutrients to make sure that the water that's eventually entering the watercourse is as clean as possible.
I think our role, Roisin, is about building collaboration with advisors and stakeholders. So how do you go about, say, building relationships with different stakeholders to try and get your job across the line?
Firstly, I suppose it's important that all the advisors in my region, so I'm in the Tipperary region, it's important that they are all on board. So I'm based in the NINA office, so we've NINA, Thurles and Clonmel. So it's important that all advisors in the region know exactly the work that I'm doing, so they can encourage their clients to engage with the ASSAP program. So then I would attend, with say, discussion groups with the dairy advisors and the dry stock advisors, to communicate with the farmers in them groups and educate them on what the ASSAP program is and the service that we provide. Um, an example would have been Kate working with KT groups. Um, and there, then you would see engagement from farmers. So they would be asking the likes of myself to call out and do an ASSAP visit. Um, and if they're in a priority area for action, then you would look at maybe funding that's available to implement the measures. Um, we would also attend events as well, for engagement. We work closely with the catchment scientists in the region. And then I suppose on the dairy side of things, we would collaborate with Dairy Industry Ireland. So the co-ops, for example, I mentioned Arabon, Dairy Gold, Tirlawn. So it's very much a collaborative approach.
ASSAP is going now since about 2018, I think it kicked off. So, you know, we're going probably, and advisors are out on the ground from 2019. So it's going a good while now. And there's a lot of resources, and you mentioned, so Teagasc have about 20 advisors, and the dairy co-ops have a good number of advisors as well. And we now have Meat Industry Ireland have some advisors. So I think between the both, there's over 40 additional advisors, and then the 20 Teagasc ones. So that's a lot of resources. I suppose my question is, why is it so important? Why is the big focus on water quality now? Are we in a bad situation, or is I suppose, are we making an impact?
Yeah, so water quality, it is for sure. It's definitely getting a lot of attention right now, and for a good reason, I suppose. Like water quality, it's a key part of our environmental sustainability. So it affects everything from our food systems and biodiversity, so I suppose, to the health of our local communities. Ireland's clean water is one of our greatest natural assets. But I suppose in recent years, monitoring has shown that some of our rivers, lakes, and estuaries are coming under pressure. And that's mainly because of nutrient losses like nitrogen and phosphorus, which are coming from both agricultural and non-agricultural sources. Um, Under the EU's Water Framework Directive, Ireland, like other member states, has to make sure that all our water bodies reach at least good status by 2027. Um, Now, I suppose when we look at Ireland's performance compared to the rest of Europe, we're actually in a fairly strong position. But I suppose there's still work for us to do. And right now, with only over half of our water bodies meeting this objective, um, it means that we've plenty of room for improvement, if we want to protect this valuable resource for the future. And I suppose it's important with the retaining of the nitrates derogation that we improve and maintain our water quality. And I suppose, Cottle, the goal here isn't to point the finger. It's about working together, like you're saying, in a collaborative approach. So communities, farmers, and policymakers, we can all work together to protect and restore our waters, um, for future generations.
And I know that the recent EPA report came out yesterday, and the news wasn't wonderful. You could take some positives, but also a lot of negatives from it. But there's a slight decline. I think we're back a couple of percent of decline nationally. But we had some good news earlier on the year where we had some nitrate reductions, and even the report yesterday, we did have nitrate reductions. However, we've had phosphorus has gone up. So. Um, there's a lot of work. We can see some improvements in that report, and the report does mention ASSAP is working in some of the ASSAP areas, which is great. So I suppose we have the tools, Roisin. It's just a matter of getting it onto the farm, really, isn't it?
At this stage, it's about everyone working together. Like, there's no point in saying, oh, well, it's the dairy farmer causing the problem, and there's no point in saying it's the dry stock causing the problem. Like, we all need to look after our own. And what I would say to a farmer, either at a discussion group or on a one-to-one basis, is you mightn't be the problem, but I suppose it's about ruling out your farmyard and looking at land management practices that you can make, because every small action makes a contribution. And even encouraging, like from what I can see anyway, when I call to a farmer in a particular area, usually that comes more visits in the area, because the farmer will talk about the service that we provide, and it's peer to peer encouragement. I think is really important.
Roisin, what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so a typical day for me really is getting out on the ground and visiting farms and working with the farmer on a one-to-one basis. So before I visit a farm, I like to gather as much background information as I can. So um, I'd look at the catchment that the farm is in. For example, we'll say they're in the Nina 60 catchment, for example. I'd look at the status of that water body. I'd look at any of the pressures on that water body, in particular the agricultural pressures. Um, and then I bring out a map of the farmyard. I would look at the pit maps. So they're like your pollution impact potential maps for nitrate and for phosphorus. And if they have a nutrient management plan done, I get that from their advisor. So when I get to the farm, then I would walk the land and I'd look at and we go down to the water body. That's if there is one on the farm. And we discuss land management practices. So we could talk through the buffer zones for slurry and fertilizer spreading. And we would discuss the nutrient management plan that they have done or possibly that they're going to do one when they've soil sampled last. And then we would go back up to the farmyard then and we would look at how water is being managed. So we do a rainwater management plan. So we'd look at where the water flows throughout the yard, where silage effluent is being collected, organic manure, for example, and how that's being managed.
A lovely thing about this program, Roisin, is like the issues are identified and the assessments are done, and we know what the challenge is within, say, for example, the Nina catchment that you're working in. But we're enabled through this program to develop solutions. Like we can co-design interventions with farmers and take all that scientific research and their local knowledge to put systems in place and test those to see that are they working as part of the program. So you were, I don't know whether you or not, you do some wetland restoration, or would you go about the cover cropping initiatives with farmers or targeted grazing strategies? All of these can be employed. And I suppose you're using some of them in your day-to-day workings as well, aren't you, Roisin?
Yeah, so we would do a report then after doing the ASSAP assessment. I would do up a report and I'd agree with the farmer then what I'm going to put in the report. So practical solutions. So you know, it would break it down into clean water management, organic manure management, land management, like what we said about the buffers. And then if there is funding available through the Farming for Water EIP, we would bring in measures like, for example, catch crops, if that's applicable to the farmer, um, restricting livestock access from water courses, um, grey water management on farm, nutrient management plans. So we'd look at different measures then that the farmer can implement, and we'd agree a time frame then to implement these measures.
Roisin, what is grey water?
Grey water, I suppose, in relation to the GAP regs, there isn't really a term for grey water, but I suppose across the ASSAP team, we've come across what we would refer to as grey water. So I suppose when you have your clean yard, it's very much about management. So this kind of a grey yard, it would be it's not clean, but I suppose in the winter, you know yourself, it can be hard to manage these yards. So a lot of a sediment would build up and the nutrients would bind to this sediment. And in a lot of cases, this grey water is going directly to a surface water body. And a lot of sediment then as a result would build up in the water and nutrients too. So it's about, I suppose, management of clean yards to reduce this grey water. So, for example, under the Farming for Water EIP, there's funding to they'll fund a farmyard bucket and brush, I suppose, to reduce the sediment on that yard. And then further, then, for example, the settlement tank to capture that sediment and then into a nature-based solution to filter the nutrients. So, for example, your vegetated bunded drain or a willow filter bed. So what I would say to a farmer when they're asking me about clean and dirty yards is it's all around management. So it's either clean or dirty. So with these clean yards, if it's trafficked in the winter, it's about keeping it clean. If there's livestock walking across the yard, is it clean or is it dirty? So management is definitely key when it comes to yards.
And Deirdre, I think it's important, I suppose, for our listeners to understand that when we're talking about nature-based solutions, it is like Roisin said, it's either clean or it's dirty. So if it's dirty, it goes to slurry or soil water. And what Roisin described as the grey water is, as per GAP regs, it is effectively clean water. And the way you keep it clean is you keep your yard scraped. We know there's always some residues, so it's almost like we're going above and beyond the regulation, but we're certainly not looking to put soiled water or anything like that into these nature-based solutions, are we?
No, I think that co-designing thing and those
Yeah.
interventions that we can use with farmers, and draw on the research because, they do work. The riparian buffers have been proven to work. Across the country, we're doing a bit of work on them in Kilkenny ourselves and we're testing them. And there's the results coming from the willow beds and the co-designed filter riparian buffers. They do work. So it's fantastic that we're allowed scope to develop these solutions and put them in place with farmers, and it just opens them up to a whole new the nature-based solutions rather than putting in concrete all the time as well, because that has its implications with carbon.
So on the concrete roasting, this is something you probably come across. There's probably a lot of grassland up where you are. So the more tanks we put in and we fill with mostly water, might be slightly dirty, but if you put that clean water that comes from the sky and it ends up in a tank, it has to be spread sometime during the year. And it'll end up getting spread at the wrong time if we're not careful. And we have the new regs, I suppose, now in the month of December, there's no spreading of soil water either.
Yeah, so it's important to minimize as much clean water getting into tanks as possible. So your chutes and gutters, that it's piped either directly to a surface water body or into a soak pit, that it's not adding to your slurry storage or your soiled water storage. And just, I suppose, to touch on the nature-based solutions and that grey water again, I suppose, like, it's important that you have enough storage to collect your silage effluent, your soil water and slurry storage, and that this is just, as you said, Carl, over and above your GAP regulations, that it's to deal with what we were saying as grey water, to capture sediment and filter nutrient dense water is what I would refer to it as. It may look clean, but if you were to test it, it is nutrient dense.
Roisin, tell us, what has the response from the farmers been like when you approach them about water quality within the catchments that you're working in?
Yeah, so the response has actually been quite positive. I suppose it's what I have found is that I'm trying to get out to as much groups and events as I can, because it's about making farmers aware of the ASSAP program, because a lot of the time they don't engage with the program because they're just not really sure what it is. But once they hear that it's free, confidential advisory service and that we're not a policing body, that they are very positive to work with us. Farmers don't want to be the cause of water pollution. They genuinely care about the land and the environment around them and they want to protect it. But what they're asking for is practical solutions and realistic ones that aren't going to be high maintenance, and that it's not going to have a major impact on productivity. Um, when you take the time to sit down with a farmer and you show them the science behind the catchment, they're very receptive to the information.
I think when one farmer was in the area, or they tend to adapt to the peer-to-peer learning, don't they, as well? When they see somebody doing something positive, or a farmer within the area, buying into the whole thing, or buying into the whole ASAP program or the EIP process, it's kind of got an escalating effect then within an area, hasn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I suppose, for example, like I called out to a farmer there last week, like he had heard about the EIP at the ploughing and he was eligible. He was in the second cycle, and so he was eligible for funding. Sure, a couple of days later, I had his neighbour call. So I suppose when they see they'll see their neighbour implementing measures, so they want to get on board too, because nobody wants to be the cause of war pollution in the area.
That's a big message as well, because farmers don't want to be the problem. They want to be the solution, I think, in an awful lot of cases, don't they?
Yeah, no, definitely.
You mentioned the plough match there. You had a nice exhibition up there. I know you were on a couple of parts yourself and you were busy there for a couple of days.
Yeah, so there was catch crop demonstration, which was really effective. We had the rainfall simulator, so looking at the different soil types. So your heavier, more phosphorus risky soil type, and your more free draining nitrate risky soil type. We had a demonstration with the farmyard settlement tank, which is your two-chamber tank, and into the vegetative bundle drain, or into the willow bed. So that was really effective, I thought, because I suppose when you're trying to explain it to a farmer, it can be hard for them. This is all new. It's new to both the advisors and the farmer. So it was really good to have the demonstrations there on the day, to make it more practical.
Yeah, and there's actually a good few of those nature-based solutions and bits and pieces from the EIP actually gone in over the last few months and going in even at the moment. So there's a lot of work going on and you're doing a huge amount of work. So it'll be great to see these things in working really well next year. So looking forward to seeing that. But I suppose just to finish off, is there any key messages you'd like to give to our listeners there after today's conversation? What can they do to make their water quality better?
Yeah, I suppose if you're thinking yourself now, what can you do to help? I suppose it's about getting your basic compliance right. So looking at, where you're spreading your farmyard manure. So for example, like the close period will start now on the 1st of November. So, do you have a slab to store that? Or if not, that needs to be spread before then. And I suppose it's looking at, spreading it in the right place at the right time, getting value from your slurry. Um, you're choosing when to spread. You're not letting your tanks decide that. So looking at how much slurry storage you have, and trying to put a buffer there, to deal with risky weather periods. Improving your nutrient use efficiency, whether that's organic or inorganic nutrients. And I suppose if you do have water courses on your farm, to adhere to those buffer zones. The close period is in place now since the 1st of October, but I suppose when the close period ends, it's important to maintain that 10-meter buffer for the first 2 weeks at the end of the close period. And then after that, it's 5-meter buffer for slurry. And then for chemical fertilizer, it's 3 meters. So that 10-meter buffer is in place 2 weeks before the close period starts, and again, 2 weeks after it ends. And then finally, ASSAP, I suppose it's a program that's here to help farmers provide a fresh set of eyes on the farm, um, to ensure that we see improvements in water quality. So I would strongly encourage you to reach out to your local ASSAP advisor, whether that's in Teagasc or the dairy co-ops.
Actually, one thing I forgot to ask you, Roisin, I thought of it a while ago, and it's only when you're talking there a second ago, it came into my head. You mentioned at the start or earlier on that sometimes you go onto a farm, and if there's a water body on the farm, you start at the water body. If I'm a farmer and I have no water body or no drain near my farm, do you bother with me at all, or am I safe?
We would look at the pit maps. So if I have a farm and it's susceptible to nitrate loss, and it'd be the pollution impact potential between 1 and 3, we would discuss the loss of nitrates. So we would look, the right place, the right time, looking at multi-species, implementing clover on the farm. Yeah, so looking at the pit maps, I suppose, if they don't have a water body on the farm.
Yeah, so what you're telling me is that I don't have to have a river or drain or any connection. I can still be a problem if I'm in one of those nitrate vulnerable zones. Yeah, yeah.
So no matter what your soil type is, there's going to be different land management practices to implement.
And I think that's a really apt way to finish that. It's all about our management. Well, we can't control weather, we can't control soil type, but we can control our management, which you've described really well today. So, Roisin, thanks a million for joining us today. And it's great to hear that you're working so hard up around Tipperary. And I know all of our ASSAP advisors are working really hard at the moment. And there's a lot of work been done over the last while, so I can't wait to see the impact on our water quality. And certainly with all the work that's been done, it certainly should improve, and looking forward to see that. So thanks a million for joining us on the show.
Thanks, Scott and Deirdre. Thank you.
So there you have it. Tune in next time to hear more interesting chats and discussion.
Myself and Deirdre will be back in 2 weeks' time, but do give us a review on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening to the Environment Edge podcast.